right, welcome back on in. This is season 7, episode number 3 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2025 Australian GP review show. You have got Andy, and I'm along with Cody tonight, as always. And we just wrapped up talking about literally a wet and wild Australian GP. What a way to kick off this season. But now that the race is in our rear view, it's time to take a look at where the standings are, including the top 10 of the drivers and the team standings. As always, Cody, if you want to do the drivers, I will handle the teams.
All right. For the first time since May 2022, we have a new leader in the drivers' standings. That leader is Lando Norris, winner of the Australian Grand Prix. He sits atop the standings for McLaren with 25 points. However, Max Verstappen has not gone far. He is second place in the standings for Red Bull at 18 points. George Russell in third place for Mercedes, and then Andrea Kimi Antonelli, also for Mercedes, in fourth place. They're at 15 and 12 points, respectively. Alex Albon had a great showing in Australia. He is in fifth place with 10 points. Lance Stroll coming out of seemingly nowhere, along with Nico Hülkenberg for 6th and 7th for Aston Martin and Kick Sauber, respectively, and at 8 and 6 points. Charles Leclerc, the first of the two Ferrari drivers, is in 8th with 4 points. Oscar Piastri had some poor fortune in this race, but managed to come back to 9th place in the race to get 2 points for McLaren. And then wrapping up the top 10 is Lewis Hamilton, managing to get 1 point in his debut with Ferrari.
Yeah, I have a funny feeling I don't know if this is going to be the final standings by any stretch of the imagination. I think we're going to see some changes here throughout the course of the season. As for the team standings, it is actually 1 and T1 between McLaren Mercedes and the Mercedes Works team. They are tied on 27 points, with the edge going to McLaren simply because they have the race win. And Mercedes do not at this point. That's it. P2, or I guess now P3, would be Red Bull Racing Powertrains. They come in with 18 points. P4 is Williams. Look at that. They check in with 10 points. P5 is Aston Martin. Thank you, Lance Stroll. They are up to 8 points. P6, Kick Sauber Ferrari, exceeding their entire point total from last year. As you said earlier, Cody, they get 6 points. P7 is Ferrari with 5 points. P8, 9, and 10. Alpine, Racing Bulls, and Haas did not score points in this race, so they are all checking in with 0 points. All right. Well, you've heard our takes on the Australian Grand Prix. Crazy race. I have a funny feeling that this is what we're going to talk about a lot in the fan email segment as well. Cody, as they say, it is your time to shine. We will start with our regular Rachel Fleming, who managed to get, I give her for a lot of credit. This was a tough race if you were in the UK to wake up for. I think the pre-race started at 2:30 in the morning. We were staying up late. You had to get up early for this one. Now, it's going to get flipped around for us for China, because I think that race starts at 2 a.m. for us. Yeah. But anyway, never going to sleep again, apparently. But Cody, tell us Rachel's thoughts on the race.
All right. As you said, our first email comes in from Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. And she says, well, that was a great race, wasn't it? Lando was brilliant throughout and deserved that victory. He kept his cool throughout and soaked up the pressure. Brilliant drives from George Russell and, in particular, Alex Albon. That Williams looks good. Exciting times for them. Kimi was best of the rookies, but Ollie Behrman didn't go off either, so credit must go out to them both. No Perez watch this year for obvious reasons. Nope. Though I was disappointed that there wasn't an episode called I Have a Contract. I have introduced Alonso Watch. Oof. He crashed, though he wasn't the only one. Sauber Watch. Nico already has got Sauber off the mark for points with 7th. No need to worry about that this season. Bortoleto was one of many who went off, but it looked like something failed on the car first. And then she says, finally getting up at 4 a.m. in the UK was worth it. What a great race to kick off 2025. And since I sent this message, Kimi has 4th place back and Albon is 5th. Still far better than the Ferraris. Welcome to a world of pain, Lewis. Yeah, a lot of things there. Good on you for getting up that early. I am not a morning person. I'm going to have a hell of a time with China. Probably have to go to bed at like 5 in the afternoon. But yeah,
power nap.
A lot of good things touched on here. George Russell had a pretty quiet drive, I would say, but very good nonetheless. That Mercedes looks decent, if a ways off from the McLaren, and I think from the comeback drive that Antonelli made, I think we're going to see some good competition between the two of them, which would be pretty cool. Oliver Behrman was going to be kind of screwed in this race no matter what, because that Haas did not look good for this track. They did not look really good at any point during this weekend, and they were pretty much only finishing 13th and 14th due to attrition. But he did keep it on the track, which is more than could be said about other sessions that he had this weekend. So we'll take that as an improvement. Alonso watches bold. I hope we don't have to cue that one up too much this season. But yes, he did have his own off this race. And that honestly, he was running what, like 9th, 10th at some
he when the points.
Happened.
It was on the fringes of the points.
So I guess that's to say that the Aston Martin isn't maybe as god awful as people were expecting coming into this first race. He was running in the points. His teammate Lance Stroll actually managed to get a pretty decent haul of points. Whatever happened during the race that allowed that to happen. So good on him for that. And yeah, Sauberwatch isn't going to be as dreadfully painful as it was last year, because they already got more points than they had last year. And I think Bortoleto is actually going to be pretty fun to watch. I think he's got a lot of talent. He made it through most of the race before he had that off, and he was doing like okay up to that point. He had pretty good qualifying. He made it out of Q1 in Sauber, which we were all expecting to be the worst car. So I think he's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, Alonso has the potential to be actually very, very spicy. I don't know if you got a chance to see his Friday interview where he showed up, he's wearing his sunglasses, and he said, "I'm required to be here. There's going to be 24 Fridays, and I'm not going to tell you anything about the car on all of the 24 Fridays." We went out, we made laps, we did things, we tried setup, and that's all I have to say. And then he turned around and he walked out. So
that's Alonso trying to keep his job.
Yeah, the ticking time bomb is there, and it's all there for you. So Rachel, that's impressive if you're going to get through that. Let's put it that way. I'll be watching for when the time bomb goes off, because it's just waiting until 26. I think at this point for Fernando.
Keep it 2-engine.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of the rookies, Kimi Antonelli obviously was the best of them, and Ali Behrman finished, which was more than other guys did. We did talk about that. Very impressed with what Alex Albon did in the Williams, and also got to be impressed with George Russell coming home P3. In all of the chaos, I don't recall him having an off. He was one of the few that I didn't see having major issues. So just being there and being part of the equation is probably the best thing for where Mercedes are right now. And if they can bring some development to that car, they can maybe step up and get in the fight a little bit more. But they were clearly the better of the two. What we were thinking were the 2A and 2B teams between Ferrari and Mercedes. Clearly Mercedes got the better of them here. We shall have to see what the response is come China and come some of these other places. I mean, we talked about the Lando and Max going around and in up and around each other throughout the whole course of this race. I do think, I really do hope that this is the beginning of a narrative shift around Lando a little bit, that he can do it. I think the fact that he led from pole, got through the first corner, there were no issues. Like I said, I think he had to win this race like 3 or 4 separate times, and each time he got it done. Wasn't always the prettiest, but he got it done, and I think that's what counts in the end. Rachel, thank you very much as always. We've got another regular here, Dave Doherty. Cody, what's he got to say?
Dave says, "Hi team, F1 is back, and what a great way to do it. McLaren, they look so positive and powerful. Do you think that McLaren and Lando will lead this championship? or I'm maybe guessing win this championship. As for Max, it's good to see that he's still around. As we know, Max DNF'd here last year. Max actually did mention that during his interview. He said, well, this is 18 more points than I got last year, so I'll take it, which is a pretty positive thing to come out with. Then Dave says, the championship looks interesting between McLaren and Red Bull. I'm happy that Mercedes, parentheses George, had a good start, P4 in quality and P3 in the race day. Wow. And how good is the F1 TV app on the phone? It has given me all the information of the race. I've used the F1 TV phone app many a time when I didn't have my computer available, and it actually works quite well. I'm pretty impressed. And as I've told Andy here, they finally have an F1 TV app for my TV, so I don't even have to go through all this crap with hooking up my TV or my computer to the TV to get that up where I want to watch it. But yeah, the championship looking interesting between McLaren and Red Bull, maybe for now, or I would maybe tone that back a little bit to McLaren and Max for the moment. George did have a good start. I would also extend that Mercedes happiness to Antonelli, despite the fact that he had poor qualifying, which was kind of partly out of his control. We saw it was something we didn't really talk about during the qualifying segment. That he had a small off near that gravel trap, but it really wasn't that bad considering what a lot of other drivers were doing at that same part in the track when they were pushing, and yet he got some kind of damage on the floor of his car. It was sparking really bad through the rest of that lap. That probably had an impact on his lap time. On top of that, Mercedes was apparently trying to save soft tires potentially for the race that they never used or something, and they went out in Q1 on mediums, which was a bold call, but he had an awesome recovery drive. So I would say that I'm happy that both Mercedes drivers had a good start to the season. Let's see here. Max, yep, he is still around. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. If he thinks that he can drag that car to another driver's championship, my God, he's going to do it. But he's got a lot of work to do that because the McLaren car looks very strong. Lando and Oscar Piastri both look very confident in their ability to wheel it around to a win. I think we're going to see a lot of wins from both of them this year. As far as I'm concerned, do I think that McLaren and Lando will lead the championship, as in win it at the end? I think that it is a very, very, very good chance. I think there's going to be a good battle between Lando and Oscar. We'll have to see where this development race goes because they go in a lot of different directions here, especially considering the resources that are going to need to be allocated to developing next year's car with the new regulations. I'm sure a lot of teams are already putting all of their focus on that. I think teams that think they've got a shot this year, like Red Bull and Ferrari, and Mercedes, will develop their car for a while. But if McLaren can keep their development out in front, if they can keep their car very strong despite the upgrades that other guys are bringing, I think eventually they're going to have to give up. So I do think that there is a really good chance of both of them winning the championship.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of this that I'm going to just remind everybody is remember that big technical directive is going to kick in after Spain, and if and we don't know, and I've read a lot about Rob Marshall and the FlexiWing thing. Is it a huge advantage? Is it just enough to make the car more stable? It's tough to tell, and we're going to find out. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if they are playing games with FlexiWings, they're not going to be able to post Spain. So it's going to be interesting to see. Do we have one running order pre-Spain and then a separate running order after that? And then where does it go? And then who throws what at what development? Because you're already a third of your year in. I would say at least for the first 4 or 5, certainly for these flyaway races, I think until they maybe get to somewhere like Bahrain, I definitely think McLaren will have the advantage. But I do think if you're going to see any development, you're going to see it probably even starting there. because it's a lot closer to these teams' home bases. They're used to shipping stuff there, and you can get parts from your factory into Bahrain a lot easier than you can necessarily some other places. I don't think you're gonna see a lot of the same pecking order. Maybe Ferrari get back up there a bit. I think you're going to see a lot more of your testing pecking order in China. It's a Tilke circuit, just kind of like Bahrain is a Tilke design circuit. I think you're going to see a lot more straightforward weather. I don't believe there's a chance for any rain yet. I haven't looked at the long-term forecast, but I will do so. So I think your first maybe 2-3 races are going to be, pretty similar in terms of that. After that, it's going to come down to who wants to develop, and like you said, who's going to put chips in for 25 versus calling it a day and going for 26. So yeah, we're one round in, and with 23 races to go, it's a long time. There can be a lot of things that change between now and then. But yeah, as a McLaren fan, it's definitely fun to see advantage early, at least for sure.
I would not be surprised to see Red Bull continue to develop the car throughout the season. I think I would say that there's a good chance that this is just like 2013, where this could be the twilight of their successful years, potentially for a while. And I think they're going to do what they can to try to get a 5th consecutive driver's title for Max, because it's only ever been done once before.
Yep.
And I think that if they can get that accolade, I think they're going to go for it. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them developing well into the year. I'm also of the opinion that McLaren looks so good. I don't think that the flexi wing thing is all that's making that car good. Like, I think that, yeah, maybe it'll be a lot closer when those additional tests come into play, starting with the beginning of the second third of the season. But I think we're still going to see them out in front, because there's other teams that have developed flexi wing stuff as well, and they're not looking nearly as good as that McLaren. So they've got probably a pretty good all around package going. But I do hope that it tightens up. Hopefully, even before we get to Spain.
Well, again, these are things that we're going to have to see. I certainly did not. I think to your point about Red Bull, I think is actually really spot on, because I don't think I had 15 updates on their sheet as part of my prep for this weekend. And there it was, all of a sudden Friday practice rolls around and they show the report, and Red Bull's got 5 pages of stuff that they brought and did a whole lot of testing. So they are definitely trying to weed out a lot of what this car is. And they made a ton of progress in one weekend. So they are doing everything they could. And you could see, it's almost role reversal go back to like 2023 and the race I remember in Hungary, where Max ended up winning by like 20 seconds over Lando. But it was always in the first part of the stint, Lando could stay with Max. And then as the stint just wore on, Max just was able to eke out lap time, lap after lap after lap. It's kind of the reverse scenario now, where Lando's able to do that and Max is the one dragging it. And what we kind of saw, we did kind of see the tipping point where the tires just, shut off on the Red Bull and they just couldn't keep the performance up. But to their credit, I thought they kept the performance up a lot longer than I think anybody had anticipated going into this weekend. So I don't think we're done by a long shot. We got a long, long way to go.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you to everybody who participated in the fan email segment. We do love, always chiming in and reacting to your thoughts on what you guys saw this weekend. Thank you, Dave, for hopping on Blue Sky and promoting a lot of our stuff. That was awesome. So we're literally building that following from zero. So we appreciate all of the help and the support that you brought over the course of the weekend. So special shout out to Dave there. All right, so we will now transition into our awards, and we shall start, as we are apt to do, with the rubbish. I will go first here. It's not, I don't have a mad rubbish, like I'm really upset about anything, but I am going to kind of give this one to the home American team, Haas, because I guess now we know why they were afraid to do any quali runs, because that looked painful. And if they don't want to develop a lot into this 2025 car, they could be one of the first ones that I think just kind of say, you know what, let's just focus on 26. And it could be a very long year for Esteban Ocon and Ali Behrman, unless it gets better and gets better fast, because from what I saw, it looked painful. Yikes. Cody, what you got?
It's weird for Haas how like it seems like year on year you don't know what you're going to get. Last year they looked pretty good. Looked like they were in position to finish like sixth in constructors, and that only didn't happen because of that crazy Alpine double podium. And then this year now they're back to being like comfortably the worst, at least in this first race. So who knows? For my rubbish award, same as you, I don't think I clearly had like a very strong opinion for rubbish this weekend, especially considering this was a really hard race, as we discussed. So it's kind of hard to put too much blame on a lot of the rookie drivers. I am, however, gonna pick Liam Lawson as my rubbish award, and that's because, for one, he didn't finish the race. Two, he's in Red Bull now, which is, probably still a pretty tricky car to drive, but it is, from what we saw from Max, one of the stronger cars on the grid, and his qualifying performance was pretty bad. And we go back to this; it's the first race weekend for him in a new car, but he did have a little bit of show from last year. He participated in a good chunk of the season last year in a worse car and showed pretty well. At least, from what we can tell, it was a worse car. Now that our Racing Bull actually looks pretty nice, but I digress. He's got some experience, and he did not look good. The qualifying session was dry. It was hot, and this track is unforgiving for qualifying, because if you mess up at certain parts of the track, you end up in a gravel trap, and you're just kind of screwed. But he didn't even make it out of Q1. So I'm hoping that this is kind of a blip, and that he'll get a better hold on that car. I wouldn't go, I'm giving him my rubbish award, but I wouldn't go as far as what a lot of people have been saying on social media, which is that he's washed, he's awful, they should have given the seat to Tsunoda. I'm not ready to make that leap yet. Yes, Tsunoda is a more proven talent, and for what it's worth, Yuki Tsunoda had a pretty darn good weekend this weekend. He had very good qualifying. Was in position to actually finish in the points, and it just didn't really go his way. But there's reasons they don't want to put him in the Red Bull car, and there's got to be, because they would have done it by now. I'm willing. Yeah,
they definitely. The whole point of why Lawson is in that seat is because they need that second seat to be scoring points. They need that second seat to be in the mix. And for whatever reason, unfortunately, he just wasn't. And look, I'm not ready to put anybody into a coffin and call it a career or any of that. And I think the people who were kind of doing that, we just love to make quick and rash decisions in the F1 fandom sometimes. I'm going to give him a break, but he knows it's got to be better. I think if you talk to him, I'm pretty sure the first thing out of his mouth was, I have to be better. He knows that. I'm hoping that, he's going to have hopefully a good amount of runway to try to prove it. We're going down to a track that he should know a little bit. In China, they don't run there a lot, but that's, then he's kind of on par with everybody else. So, and it's going to be a sprint weekend next weekend. So, you could just as easily bounce back really quickly. So we're going to have to see but to your point, the spotlight is already shining very quick, very hard and bright on one Liam Lawson, and he's got to respond, and he's got to do it quickly.
I'm hoping that Red Bull is kind of going a little bit away from the just canning drivers left and right. They did hold on to Perez for a very long time, despite rocky performance, and he had the backing to go with that. But I do hope that they give Liam like enough time to actually prove what he's got instead of like switching things around and putting Isaac Hadjar in the car like halfway through the season. But he's not ready. Like, I think that it could be really messy. So I think they just leave him in the car, let him get used to it, let him show that he can do better, and they go from there.
I mean, I'm with you, but at the same time, these are all guys that owe their careers to Helmut, and Helmut doesn't have a whole lot of patience. And that's always the worry. That's always the worry. That was the one thing that I always said was different about Perez, was he didn't owe Helmut Marko a thing. Helmut could say whatever the hell he wanted, and Sergio was his own made guy. Liam Lawson's not a made guy. So we're going to find out. But I hope he is strong enough. I think of the whole crop, I always thought he was the best one of them in terms of talent. So it's got to come to the forefront. We're going to watch. That's what's going to make it fun. All right, so we will move into analysis paralysis. With a race like this, the calls mattered, and the calls mattered early and late. So I'm going to go, I guess I'll go first on this one, and I'm going to give this one out to Ferrari just because they went for the home run. I got it. I understood it. But oh, how you struck out when you went out one more lap too much. Had you just followed Max in, I think you would have been happier with the result. But I understood why they went for it, because they had no other real chance to get up there. And for a fleeting minute, as all the announcers said, Lewis Hamilton was in the lead of an F1 race and debut for Ferrari.
Yep, that was fun for all of 5 seconds.
3 corners.
Yep, exactly. My analysis paralysis is going to go to Haas, and that's because I think they had the chance to make an actual working home run play, where they didn't pit with everybody else to go to the slicks. Everyone knew the rain was coming. As I said before, I thought Haas was going for some crazy strategy where they're like, you know what, we're going to try to make these inters work for a little longer, and then we'll be, we're going to get a little bit of track position from everyone else pitting under the safety car. We're going to maybe fall back a little bit here, but then we're going to be in great position when that rain actually comes. And they might have been. But after they didn't pit with everyone else for slicks, then before we impact green flag racing, they went in anyway and lost all that track position that they might have gained, and then they were screwed on slicks just like everybody else. So I feel like they were maybe it almost seemed to me like they were going to go for that strategy, and then they thought differently of it and bailed. And to me, that is the definition of analysis paralysis.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a very interesting thing to see if they had been able to actually hang it out, because inters on a drying or dry track tend to turn into slicks. We've seen that before. Look at the Lewis Hamilton. Yeah. Look at the Lewis Hamilton Turkey tire, circa 2020, where there was no tread on it, and it was basically just a thing of rubber, looking more like a slick. So even had it rained again, the question would have been, had those inters had anything left to actually keep those cars on the track? But I was with you. In the moment, I was like, okay, I get what you're doing. You're waiting to see if the rain comes. They got the rain that they would have looked for, but yet when the safety car had come out, they all bailed and they went to slicks. So I was, at the time, I was totally where you are on this. I'm like, I'm not understanding what they were doing. But I didn't get a chance to hear the radio.
Or they weren't going to get points going the slick strategy.
Right.
So unless we had a lot more retirements. So to me, it made sense to just like, well, Haas does that all the time. They're like, well, let's throw this at the wall and see what happens. And yeah, they didn't go with it for some reason.
Would have been more interesting had they thrown full wets on.
Ooh, yeah, it could have. Maybe
you never know. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I think at the end when it was drying back out, because that rain stopped. But in those couple laps, boy, could you imagine where they might have gotten to in those couple laps before it started to dry out again? But anyway, what could have been? So we will move into our dark horse of the day. Cody, I'll let you go first on this one. Who you got?
I'm going to go for a twofer on the dark horse. I'm going to go with Lance Stroll and Nico Hülkenberg, because they, in my opinion, pretty much came from nowhere. Really benefited from that really rocky lap 44 craziness with everyone being on slicks and going for the inters. They pit for inters at an opportune time and putting them in position to finish well in the points in 6th and 7th place for Stroll and Hulkenberg, respectively. So I truly did not see, especially a Kick Sauber in the points in 7th place, and the Aston looked pretty poor in testing. I don't think we were really expecting too much from them either. So, definitely my dark horses.
All right. I'm going to give my dark horse out to Alex Albon and the Williams. And if Carlos Sainz managed to get in the points, I probably would have given this to him because that Williams does not look like a mirage. You could have looked at the testing and said, well, they were the only one to run a C4. It was a glory run, low fuel, da-da-da-da-da. Why are they leading sessions? Apparently this is real because at least certainly in free practice, when it was dry and the conditions were really known, both Williams were in the mix. Like P5, P6, P7, they have definitely made a step, and a significant one from where they were last year to this year. The form looks legit. The Carlos Sainz effect seems to be real. The James Vowles effect seems to be real, and that is elevating Alex Albon to do better. So all of the components that you want in a race team appear to be happening kind of almost in front of our eyes. The question is, how far can they take it? How far? What I'm so fearful of with Williams is that they're going to show great early in the early rounds, and people are just going to outdevelop them because they have already said that they're going to go more into 2026 than they want to do with this car. But you almost then have to go, well, James, come on, you got to give some resources to this car because you're doing so well. So
you will make more money.
Yeah, exactly. And God knows they could use it. And again, here's another race where they had to put together another wrecked car. That poor tub of Carlos Sainz has been wrecked so many times. It's really, really tragic. But, oh, man. But again, on the good note, that form looks legit. Let's hope that car does some real good things. I'm interested to see what they do in China. All right. So last award is our driver of the day. Cody, I'll let you go first. Who you got?
It's got to be Lando. He, as we discussed, had to win this race many times, and he withstood the pressure. He withstood pressure from his teammate, from Max on the track. He withstood the pressure of a wet track, changing conditions, having his own off into the gravel, made a comeback from that, and held off Max once again at the end of the race when Lando was driving with what apparently was a pretty damaged floor from his cruise through the gravel. So he had to stand up to monumental pressure this race, and he did it. And now he can say that he is the points leader to start off this season.
All right, for my driver of the day, I felt he had to win this race 4 or 5 different times, and somehow he managed to pull it off. Lando Norris. I really do hope this is the beginning of a turn. It's one of those drives that if you win it, can be career changing. I don't want to get ahead of myself. There's a long way to go. He hasn't won any sort of championships or anything like that yet, but this is one of those things that in between the years is significant, I think, for him, like I have seen him progress throughout his career. So he gets my nod for driver of the day. All right. So before we hop on out, we will now take a look at the predictions. And the rain threw our predictions a bit for a loop. I think that's pretty fair. Cody, you finished the weekend with 2 points. We did manage to nail the qualifying, though, pretty good. You got the pole sitter. You had Lando there. And your lap time was actually really, really close to on it. I think it was a 122.6 versus a 122.1. So that's only a half a second off there. So you get the overall lap point. It came down to the prop bet, as it turned out. I finished with 3. I got the pole sitter. I had the quali time because it was faster than you, and both Lando and Oscar went faster than both of us thought when they pulled that last lap time out of the bag there. So that surprised, I think, both of us there. And I got the prop bet because it came down to Jack Doohan. Once he wrecked, that was pretty much the end of it. The safe bet that we all had was Oscar Piastri was going to score points, and then almost that didn't happen. So it just goes to show what we thought about going into this race and what actually happened. Turned out to be very, very, very different. But so I guess I get a early 1-0 lead after one round. All right. Well, that wraps up a enthralling and very fun and nerve-wracking, all the emotions, Australian Grand Prix weekend. This is only one of 24. We get to turn around and do this all again next weekend. The Chinese Grand Prix awaits. It's a sprint weekend on top of that. So we have all sorts of fun, a lot of sessions, not a lot of practicing to talk about. So we're going to be here to try to cover it all. Cody, any final thoughts on this first weekend of the season?
If McLaren has to win every race this year, I hope that they're all as exciting as this one.
All right, fair enough. I am still, the inner part of me is jumping up and down, but I'm still holding back just a little bit because I've seen bad things happen. But anyway, we will be here to cover it all. We're going to try to get our preview done Wednesday, get you all psyched for the Chinese Grand Prix weekend. Stay tuned to us on social media if news breaks between now and then. Blue Sky, Twitter, those are going to be the main sources to find our stuff there. So thank you very much for joining us. And as always, folks, may all your laps be fast.